Hi, so today I'm going to explain you how the theory that we've learned in the Information Technology 2 class about access applies to the RESP department at IA, which is actually the place where I work. So RESP means Registered Education Savings Plan, and it's actually a way for people to invest money into the studies of their children at university, for instance. So in what concerns the chapters cover, I'll just explain you that at IA we do not work with Access, but it would be extremely useful for some aspects of our work, and it's better than Excel once again for some aspect of the work that we do. So for reality, Module 9, which is creating a database, would be extremely useful for us. Module 10, which is using SQL or Design View to filter the data, is also extremely useful because we receive many thousands of contracts from the government, and if you only want to filter some contracts, well, using SQL or Design View would be a great way to do so. In Module 8, using macros is also great because you can decide and click on buttons only to open the forms that you want. Module 8 also creating a menu is also great, and exporting forms and report as PDFs, for instance, would be really great for coordinators. In Module 9, creating a data sheet would also make all the tasks way easier. And what concerns what's not so useful, however, would be Module 9 automatic error checking and Module 9 input mask. Alright, so I'll just show you the database that I've created for the sake of the video. So what I did is that I created customers and employees table. I've created 4 employee records and a few sample of customers just to show you how it works. So I have the contract number, the beneficiary first name, beneficiary last name, city, province, type of RESP, and the amount contributed will allow us to filter some contracts a bit later in the video. So what's important to remember at IA is that we have thousands of contracts. So if we want only to get a few of them, concerning their type of contract, for instance, is that we can do queries, and queries are good for that. So for instance, if I only want diploma contracts, because we have 2 types of contracts, which are family contracts and the diploma contracts. So in this case, I only want diploma contracts. So what I did is that I went into query design. I used my customer table. I went there. I wanted the number, first name, last name, and my contract stat, no, not contract status, pardon, my type of RESP, and then I typed diploma because I only wanted those contracts to work on them. So that way I only get my diploma, and it's easier for me to filter and get less contracts to be able to find myself more easily. If for instance I would have liked to have the contracts that are only over $20,000, well, I would have went also into query design. I would have chosen customers, I would close, I would use the customer number, beneficiary first name, last name, and I would have went to the amount contributed. I would have typed actually bigger than 20,000 as a criteria, and there you go. I would have had my contracts where the amount contributed would have been more than 20,000. So when it concerns the employees, however, if for instance I would have liked to use the efficiency of employees and to know how much time they spent on doing things other than working on contracts and reports, I would have been able to do so by going to query design, using my employees table, employee number, first name and last name, and going into the hours spent for other things than working on contracts. All right. So there you go. I would have been able to see who has worked more than, for instance, 15. Actually, how much time those employees have spent working on other contracts than the government contracts, for instance. So there you go. That's a great way to measure efficiency and see who does what and how things could be improved in a sense by coordinators. Another thing to remember too is that since I have tables and I want to create macros, I need to create forms. So to create those forms, I need to go into table, click on my table that I want, create the form right there, right? Clicking on the forms for the customers, for instance, and then I'm able to see all my forms. So I just save it as customer. It's already been created in my case. So I'll just explain to you how I've done my macros then. So I went into design view. For instance, if I wanted to open the customer form only by clicking on open customer form in the menu right here, for instance, that I'll create later, well, I will be able to do so by using my sub macro open customer form. Same thing for opening employees form, for instance, in one click in another menu that I'll show you later. Same thing for printing a preview of an employees form, for instance, and exporting customer forms too, right here, that I've done Let me just open it once again. Yeah. So there you go, you have your PDF format. So if you want to export it as a PDF, for instance, or if a boss wants to export the customer form as a PDF and send it to another department, well, they'll be able to do so by using this macro. So I'll just close this right now, and I'll show you the menu that I've done to make it easier for bosses or for employees to get to the forms that they want in only one click. So the forms are right there. I've created the form. I'll show you how I created it. You go into form design and you click on whatever you want. So for instance, I wanted to create buttons on one click. So I clicked on the little XXX right there and I clicked on miscellaneous, run the macro that I've created right here. So I'll run a macro, and for instance, if I want to open the customer forms to be able to work on them, well, I'll just click on next and write open customer form, and click on next, and then finish open customer form, and then I'll be finished. And when I'll go into my view and open the form once again, I'll be able to open all the forms only by clicking on this button. So it's easier for employees to find themselves, and it's a little less working on Access if they're not used to it. So it's really great in that case. I've done the same thing for exporting the forms. So for instance, if you want to export the forms that you've created through your forms right here in customers and employees, I want to export my customer form. I can export it as a PDF whenever I wish to do so by clicking on this little button. So what I've done the same thing. I went into query design, and not in query design, pardon, I'll just go back a step. I went into form design, pardon. I went into my little X right here. I wanted to create a miscellaneous macro, and then I wanted to export. So I did this. I wanted to export for customer form, and it's the same thing. Export customer form, and then it's done. And when I go back into my view and open the form once again, I'm able to click on them and get back to the export option. So in what concerns the main menu for the RESP, well, it's easy to get back to all your forms into one single form. So it's easier once again for employees who are not really familiarized with Access to get the forms that they want in a few seconds, in a few clicks. So what I did in that case is that I went into create navigation horizontal tab, and you just once again just slide what you want into your form, and you can see all the data that you wish to see in that case. So I'll just explain you a real life situation that happens at IA is that sometimes we have terminated contracts and we don't have to work on those contracts, but those terminated contracts are still in the reports that we receive from the government. So if you want to filter those contracts and only take them out, we can use a query in Access to actually know what contracts it is. So I'll just explain you how I've done into this case. So I created my query. I went into my customers right here. I used my contract number, beneficiary first name, beneficiary last name, and then I went into the contract status. I wanted to have the contracts that were terminated, so that way I would be able to see which one I have to take out from the government reports. So in that case, I know that those 3 contracts are terminated and that there's actually no money left in those accounts, so I can take them out. So it's as simple as that. It's a little less complex than Excel, because sometimes in Excel we have documents that are so heavy that we cannot even filter because there are too many contracts. So Access is once again better than Excel in that case. Alright, so what concerns what's not useful with Access at IA is that since we did not work with Access in the past, we would not necessarily be familiarized with the software. So we would only import the Excel database by clicking on Excel right here and import the files that we need. So we would not enter the data manually. So we would not necessarily use the automatic error checking in our procedures, because there are no errors to check since we do not create the reports manually. Another thing is apparently useful in the Access book, but I don't think it's useful for IA, is that since we do not use contracts that have a lot of characteristics, for instance, 2 first capital letters into some contract number, we do not necessarily need to use those input masks. So for instance, in the book, they would have asked you to, ask for 2 capital letters for the contract number, but we do not necessarily need this. at IA, since we only have numbers, or since we only have specific contracts. So it would not be useful for us. So basically, that's pretty much it. I've covered all the aspects, pardon, that were useful for access for the RESP department at IA. So I would speak to my bosses, and I'll probably, bring that issue to the table next time I meet with them, because it would be, according to me, extremely beneficial for the company to use access for contracts in the next month and maybe in the next years. So thank you very much.